All right. Hello. I'm Steve Carpenter. Welcome to Movers, Shakers, Designers, and Makers. Today, I'm talking with Adrian Smith. He earned his degree at Penn State in 1982 in landscape architecture. That was a Bachelor of Science degree. As I like to say, Adrian, back in the 1900s. That's when
Yes.
that's when I earned my bachelor degree too. Adrian's work has spanned the private sector, the public sector, and operation of his own studio in New York City. We're going to learn a bit more about that as the conversation unfolds. In 2018, Adrian was elevated as a fellow of the American Society of Landscape Architects. Election to the ASLA Council of Fellows is among the highest honors the ASLA bestows on its members and is based on their work, their leadership, their management, and knowledge, and their service. So this year, Adrian was selected to receive the College of Arts and Architecture Alumni Award in Landscape Architecture. But like so many other things in 2020, the celebration that we had hoped to have right now it's not going to happen the way we had planned it. And so we deferred until next fall when we can gather in person and celebrate you and your achievements and your accomplishments here on campus. So, Adrian, until we get to meet in person and have this conversation or a second version of this conversation, we want to get to know you here in this virtual space.
Terrific. Well, I'm really looking forward to that conversation. It's a pleasure to virtually meet you, and I too look forward to coming back to State College. It's one of my favorite places on earth, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Sometimes I ask guests to give a quick synopsis of their career trajectory. That's kind of formulaic in some ways, but let's just start with where you are now. You're in Staten with Staten Island Capital Projects, right? And you're the team leader there. Is that correct?
It's kind of funny the way like New York City is a big monster of a machine, that the New York City government. So I'm part of probably the smallest part of the monster, which is the Parks Department.
Okay.
And we, although we have a pretty big impact on the citizens of New York because our landscapes are very public and well loved and well used. And the way that our capital projects division, and capital projects sounds a little bureaucratic, but it is a way of defining what we do. The capital projects are when capital dollars are spent to build and redesign our parks. So about every 20 years, we go through that process on a park. We'd like to just start fresh, redesign it, and rebuild it. So there are 5 people like me that are in charge, or one of us is in charge of each borough, and I'm in charge of Staten Island. But I live in Manhattan, and my office is in Queens, and actually right now I'm in New Jersey because of the pandemic. But yeah, our projects are most of my projects are in Staten Island. We have a little bit of a smaller team than the other boroughs because the population is smaller. Mm-hmm. But we do have a lot of parkland. I think 1/3 of the borough is actually parkland. We have fewer projects and a smaller team, but we still have capacity. So we end up doing some projects in Queens and Brooklyn as well. And my responsibility is to really shepherd the design and the construction through to finality. So I work on the beginning ends, trying to get the budgets and the schedules decided. And I get to oversee the design, which took a little bit of getting used to because I'm a designer. I love to get my hands involved in that. And occasionally I do get down into the nitty gritty of how a project is designed and built. But mostly I'm a problem solver. And I think that's true for any professional, any student. You're really starting out as your interests get you into a profession or into a field of study, but you end up being a problem solver and a thinker, and how you think determines where your career is going to go. And so I ended up doing design and construction and trying to solve problems that occur in design and construction. So,
nice. Yeah, I like how you framed what you do as a problem solver. It's an important way to think about what you're up to, because it suggests that you might not always be the one dictating the entire trajectory or the entire direction of what you're doing, right?
No, not at all. In fact, landscape architects, I think, are a little bit unique in that, well, okay, I'm biased, clearly, but we like to think of ourselves as really good collaborators, and not all design professionals or all professionals in general, I think, have that skill. So our ability really grows out of really wanting to build a park or a landscape that pleases the greatest number of people with the greatest success, right? So Olmsted is the prime example, designing a park in Central Park and around the country, of how he took the idea of democracy and made it a park, like country in the city for all socioeconomic levels of the population. So we're trying to solve problems all the time, and we can bring together the community. Our projects always start by reaching out to the community, asking them what their needs are. We have a very strict process where we always go at night because we know people work during the day. So if you go during the day, you're not going to get such an accurate snapshot of what people want. So we always go at night. We give them a short presentation, and we actually many times we'll give them pieces like swing sets or playgrounds or a ball field, and we say, what would you like to see and where would you like to see it? And we're designers, so we don't always agree, but we definitely like to think about what others are thinking about and try to bring that into the equation. So we love to listen to kids, because kids are one of the biggest users of our park. So, kids rule, and, the spray plays, or we're building a swimming pool in one of our parks now. All those things are really, really important for the city.
Nice. Talking about problem solving, I'm not necessarily, I'm fairly convinced that the people that you work with, the communities that you work with, probably wouldn't necessarily consider what you're doing in conversation with them as problem solving. Perhaps they might see it as collaboration. To what extent do you actually frame your engagements or interactions with them as collaboration? Or to what extent do you think that that communities, I love how you brought in the kids into it. Like, do they see it as collaboration, or is this just, here are some landscape architects doing what they do? They've asked us some questions, and then they go off on what they're up to.
Well, and we did start talking about how I'm a problem solver, and I'll tell you that the problems that I usually solve are not the fun problems. I've got the really challenging problems on my shoulders, but my team, what I mean by problem solving from a design standpoint, my team really is out there on the front lines, dealing with the design problems, or that kind of working with the community. And our current commissioner, Mitchell Silver, is a professional planner. He's been the commissioner for 6-7 years now when Mayor de Blasio came in. And he really made it his goal to make sure that there were equitable parks built and rebuilt in New York City, because it seemed like up until then, funding was just bestowed upon the Parks Department by elected officials, and then we built what they asked us to build. We wanted to flip that a little bit to say, okay, the need is really in these locations, and this is where we're going to focus. And the mayor actually funded, I'll get the numbers wrong, but it was something like $60 million in different phases, and more. So we have one program called the Community Parks Initiative. We lovingly call it CPI. And then we have another one called Parks Without Borders, which both of those were, the Community Parks Initiative was more about looking at metrics about how we looked at neighborhoods that hadn't seen investment for over 20 years, where there was a socioeconomic challenge in the area. There was a lot of poverty, and that was also important. And that these parks were farther away from people, so that they really were a big resource for the community. So that's how we determined something like 60 or 80 parks across the city. We built 5 in the first phase in Staten Island, and we're building another 2 now. But then the Parks Without Borders project, to talk about the collaboration part of your question a little bit more, that really was one where we want the commissioner's idea, and we agree with him as landscape architects and planners too, is that we wanted to blur that border between the street, the public realm of the sidewalk, and the park. It's all, I mean, to most people, they don't see it in terms of, okay, Department of Transportation takes care of the street, Parks takes care of the street trees, and then DOT takes care of the sidewalks, and we take care of the park. There are no lines on the ground that tell you who is taking care of what. So our idea was to kind of blur those lines by bringing the fence lines down, opening the views up into the park, and creating that aspect of real community. And we asked the public to help us choose which parks were going to be showcased in this program. So there were 5 parks, 1 in each borough. And they basically, you could nominate, as a citizen, you could nominate any park in the city that you wanted. There was a website, there were public meetings held at night, again, so that we got the most attendance possible. We always had food, because it's nice to have a little nosh with your neighbor as you're talking about what park is important to you and why. And through a voting process, we determined what projects we were going to work on. And then that determined how we would have our community meetings. And I think we probably had over 100 people show up, which is a lot in Staten Island for one park design. We're doing one called Faber Park, and it's got this, it's got a swimming pool at one end. It's already, it's an old swimming pool. It's an old mansion from an old estate that's been converted into a rec center, but we're redoing the whole front of it and turning it into a really cool play area with these rope climbers and a spray play and an amphitheater and all kinds of really cool things. But those ideas came out of how we talk to the community. And, we can't do everything that a community asks us to do. So they wanted basketball courts and active play too. And there were basketball courts, but they're down the street, right? And there is a skate park, and it's next door. And there is a little play area. So we thought, okay, phase 1, we'll do this. We'll really make this play area. Phase 2, we're going to do the basketball court. So we're really working through that. And the community really was well involved in that. And we really enjoyed working with them. And they come back, and you see them at the ribbon cutting, and they're like, oh my God, there's that, I wanted that basketball court over there, and I really wanted bleachers, and you gave us bleachers, and now we can have our tournaments here, and you gave us lights. We have lights now. We can play at night because it gets dark so early in the fall. And so those are the kinds of things that just warm your heart when you get back out there and you see kids running around on the play equipment that was just a swing set before, and now they've got some really cool, climbing apparatus and all kinds of other things. So those are the ways we try to get the community involved and really bring out what they really need and want, and try to give it to them as best and as fast as we can. So,
sure. The timing, because you're building anticipation, right? You're building a sense of connection to it, and folks want to see once they realize, or once it becomes apparent, oh, this might be realized. Right. Then they want it to be in use as soon as possible. And I'm sure you do too, right? You want to.
We do, yeah. And that's kind of funny, because we often meet with school kids. We'll meet with elementary school kids, and they'll give us all these great ideas. They get so excited. We let them do little presentations for us, and we write down our notes that they tell us about. And then we tell them, they say, well, how long is it going to take until this park's going to be done? Because they think it's going to be done tomorrow, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we say, about 3 years. They say, I'm going to be down the street in a different school in 3 years. Right. So, that's a little bit of a disappointment, but you hope that the kids that are coming up through the ranks and the ones that move on, they'll all kind of come back and congregate in this public space in the future. And so there's a little bit of a bait and switch, but it's not quite that bad.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's shift a little bit, not in a bait and switch kind of way, but in reference to your notion of time, perhaps. Sure. You're in New York City now. I believe you'd been in New York City previously, but there's an interval in between. So can you tell me a bit about when you were in New York before, and then what made you come back? Yeah.
Sure. Well, I was, after Penn State, I moved to the New York area and started working here right away. And I worked here for, I don't know, probably 15 years or so. And I worked in the public and the private sector. I moved from city parks to a state agency and was working on the Hudson River Park. And it was right about the time that the economy was picking up at the end of the late 90s, and the economy was really picking up. Before this project that I joined was really kind of a sleeper project, and we were doing a lot of studies and a lot of things that were people like, it's never going to get built, that project. And then suddenly we started getting funding, and everybody on the state and the city, so it was a joint city-state project. Everybody's ears kind of pricked up, and we started getting a lot of attention. And there was a little jostling. I had been hired right before all of the attention was gained. So my boss ended up getting moved, and everybody kind of got moved around. And unfortunately, I didn't see a future there. So I thought, let me try something different. Let me see what the private sector is doing. And I had some colleagues through the American Society of Landscape Architects that I'd gotten to know at conferences and just at little events in our area. And one of my good friends, who's now in charge of the Cultural Landscape Foundation, Charles Birnbaum, he's a Syracuse grad, so we won't hold that against him. He suggested I meet this fellow who was designing these amazing gardens and landscapes out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's actually, this guy's name is Douglas Reed. And so at a conference, I met Doug, really loved his work, really thoughtful, residential, commercial, a lot of residential at that point, but a lot of institutional work, meaning working for art museums or college campuses or things of that sort. So I saw that as an opportunity to grow. And Doug offered me this job. I moved to Boston, and wow, I didn't get a graduate degree. I have just a bachelor's, as you said, a Bachelor of Science. And so I feel like the 2 years I spent in Boston working for Doug Reed were like my master's experience. It was just like a crash course in really diving in deep into these design problems. I'll call them a problem again.
Sure. Yeah.
And figuring out these solutions, trying to figure out principles, find out, dive into the technical underlying aspects of a project to make sure that you were designing it and really documenting it properly. And so we worked on museums all over the country, estates for wealthy individuals or wealthy families on the east end of Long Island. We did some work in Ohio. It was really, really, really a wonderful time. Work at the Arnold Arboretum, doing some really interesting work, and a lot of it ended up winning awards. And it was a real collaboration there with Doug. Doug's a brilliant designer. His current partner, Gary Hildebrand. So the name of the firm now is Reed Hildebrand. Mm-hmm. Gary Hildebrand is also doing wonderful work. They just did some great work at the Clark Institute and whatnot. I just look at that time on my life as just really being an opportunity to grow and spread my wings. But I'm really deep down a New Yorker, and I wasn't really falling in love with Boston. I thought the city was beautiful, and it was, as parks go, it's just fabulous. And it's right down by the water. You get the sense of the ocean. So I love those aspects of it, but my heart was still in New York City, and I missed the pace. In New York City, you can get a quart of milk delivered at midnight if you need it. Yeah. And in Boston, you can't get your dinner delivered after 8 o'clock unless you pay $50 extra or some kind of thing. So I was a little missing the convenience. I missed my friends, and I had some opportunities that came up through my connections just in the landscape architecture profession in New York. So I decided to move back to New York after about 2 years in Boston.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like an intense 2 years, though.
It was. Yeah, it really was. Really, really cool, though. I haven't thought back. It's quite a long time ago now. I've been back for 20 years. So it was 20 years ago, believe it or not. I know this light is very good. My skin looks great, but this tired old face has been around the block a few times.
It's wild when you can start counting in increments of 10,
I
right?
know
10 years, right? One
it's
of my
scary.
uncles told me, he said, you've been around for a little while when you can start counting in increments of 10 years. I said, thanks, that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
the time zips by, right?
it really does.
Time
It really
zips
does.
by. And I was thinking about how we're sitting here in October, mid-October. The pandemic, as you mentioned, we're in the midst of it. We hear
Yeah.
reports about one wave and a second, maybe a third wave, even after whatever wave we're in now. Will there be an end? What does the other side look like? Um, as we move through it, and maybe as we start to return to you move back to the
Yeah.
city. Certainly, you've talked a bit about how the pandemic has informed what you're doing now, but how will it inform the work you'll do when it is actually safer to be back? I mean, you talked about moving out into public
Yeah.
spaces,
Mhm.
cafes outside. I mean, thinking about interacting with other people, we're currently keeping our distance when it's actually okay to have a closer proximity to people in ways that actually are sanctioned by
Right.
science and other folks, scientists and other folks. How will that inform your work? Do you think? Will it? How do
Yeah.
you think it might change the way you're thinking about space and public engagement?
Yeah. It sure will. We had a couple of Zoom meetings among our staff and our colleagues just to think about that. And, we started talking about how we feel like we're problem solvers as landscape architects. So my immediate reaction when this thing hit was like, okay, we got to get out there and we got to help the schools figure out how to get outside. We got to help, like, what are the parks going to do? How are, we're going to close down streets and what are we going to do with the streets? It's going to be hot this summer. Let's figure out ways to do socially distance spraying with fire hydrants. And you know what? I needed to calm down. And again, Commissioner Silver said, we need to listen. We need to stop. And yeah, we've got ideas. Everybody's got great ideas, and many of them are probably good. But we need to just listen. Everybody is at a different place. I think some people are a little bit more concerned, some are a little less concerned. The scientists are really the ones we need to listen to really help guide us the most. But I think we can't just walk in with our magic wand and just make it all go away and we know best, or our black capes and say, here, we're smarter than you, we're going to tell you what we're going to do. This is the time to really listen. And I think the protests that came out in the spring also were so important for us to listen. It's important to have places to protest. We need to be able to have enough space so people can do that even in a pandemic. And I think that public space has never been more necessary. It's never been more important to think about who uses them, how they use them, what they use them for, what makes them comfortable, what makes them uncomfortable, how can we change that, how can we do things differently. We're constantly thinking of that and thinking about that. And that's the beauty of what I do. I'm sure many people feel that way about their professions, but
Sure.
I just feel like I'm learning every day. And you as an artist, I'm sure that you've also thought about how can art help, and how can visual arts and even just experiential art make a difference in people's lives, and during a pandemic and even post-pandemic.
That's it.
How is it going to inform?
Yeah, and absolutely. No, it's some of the work that I've done over the years is actually grounded in that mindset of not necessarily why is art important, or why is it important for us to make art, but what does art do, and what can it do,
Right.
And for me, it's about the meanings that can be revealed, provoked, represented, untangled through cultural production, symbolic representation, through the verbal interpretation of work. And it allows us to get to places and understandings about ourselves, our world, other people, possibilities in ways that, are a bit different than maybe some other approaches. And for me, what drives me in that work is, and I say this often, regardless of what kind of art class I might be teaching in, One of the beautiful things about art class or artwork is, again, back to problem solving. You can present a problem to the class. Every single student can respond with a right answer.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'll all be different.
And they can all be different. Right. And so to me, that's a driving force for me. How do you provide provocative problems that allow for these multiple expansive responses that can all be really good answers? So I'm interested, like, what drives you? You talked about, helping other people or right, and problem solving, but I guess maybe more specifically, what drives you to problem solve or to provide ways in which you might have a positive effect on other people's lives? What drives you to do that in public spaces through landscape architecture?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I thought about that a lot once I got to Boston. Again, back to my 2 years there with Douglas Reed and Gary Hildebrand. The meaning that you brought it up and what you said about the meaning of what you do is so important. And it doesn't matter whether you're washing glasses as a dishwasher in a restaurant, or sweeping a street, or landscape architect or artist. We all want to feel like what we do has meaning. And I think that looking for that meaning and trying to express it is the challenge that we face, and that I think enriches our lives the most. So I really think of it in terms of a non-physical, for lack of a better word, meaning or feeling or expression. I know that we deal with, I deal with underground utilities and drainage and soils and plants and that sort of thing, play equipment. But what is the meaning? Where is there something I'd like to use the word, and people will probably bristle, but spiritual. There's something spiritual about it that hits you in your heart, that is so deeply seated inside us or in our being, that you have a reaction when you come upon a space. And that's not because necessarily that you've chosen the right tree, or you've chosen to put the drainage over here, or you have a rain garden here, or you have play equipment over there. It's something about the combination of that and how it's working, and what the quality of light is, or what the feeling is when you enter a space. Like when you enter like the mall at Penn State. I mean, when I was there, fortunately, I was lucky. I was there when the elm trees were just glorious. You walk down that mall. Well, how does it make you feel? It makes you feel wonderful, like you're the most important person walking through this cathedral down this sidewalk. And that's the kind of thing that we try to do with landscape. And look at it, it's 4 rows of trees and a sidewalk, right? But it's placed perfectly. It's scaled just right. The buildings are set back just to the right spot. There's a right amount of lawn. The fences are low. I mean, all those sorts of things contribute to that. And those are the details that we try to tease out. So we get the ideas from our community, we collaborate with them, but then we try to express it with those materials to really create this amazing feeling in our spaces. And that's what makes me just tickled when I see. And like I was telling you earlier, we designed these play environments for kids, and sure, we can throw a couple of swings in and put a sandbox over there and whatever, but I tell you, we really think about how these play pieces come together. And when kids are like, they're breaking down the fences before we open. It's like, when is this going to open? When is it going to open? We can't wait to get out there. And then they climb all over, and there's like 15 of them sliding down at once. And it's just so exciting to see that. And Commissioner Silver likes to tell this story, and I'll steal it for a minute because it's one of our Community Parks Initiative projects. There was a kid who came to the visioning session, we called it, and he was, and the CPI projects got priority, so they moved through a little quicker than 3 years, but still it was like 2.5, so it was a little shorter. But anyway, this young man, little kid, came back to the ribbon cutting, and he was standing outside the fence, and the commissioner said he noticed the kid and he said, "Come on over." And he says, "No, no, no, I don't have enough money to come into that park." And he said, "You don't have to have money to come in. This is your park." And the kid was so overwhelmed. He just thought it wasn't his park.
Oh my goodness. No, that's the spiritual. No, look, that's what it means to have an impact, a positive influence on other people's lives, to break down. You talk about the kids to break down the fence to get in.
Yeah.
The work you did, this example talks about breaking down a perceived or a structural, a social hierarchy built on exclusion to allow people to realize, to have access to what was theirs all the time anyway.
Right. Right.
That's among the most powerful things we can do for anybody else.
Yeah.
No,
it wasn't my project, so I can't take credit, but it's the program that we were part of. And it's just so wonderful.
That's moving.
Yeah.
That's moving. Oh my goodness. We've been talking about your mentorship, working with working with young children, college, high school and college age students. I'm just thinking about how, in the spirit of talking about those age groups, and think about having you back on campus. If you put yourself back in the 1900s again, and you had to talk to your 18, 19, 20-year-old self, that 18, 19, 20-year-old Adrian, what advice would you tell him then, informed from what you know now?
That's a really interesting question. Wow. And this is going to sound a little materialistic, but I'll start out that way, and hopefully I'll get to a good ending point with my words. I was really afraid I wasn't going to make any money as a landscape architect, to be honest with you. I mean, I came from a dairy farm, so we were rich in land, didn't have a lot of cash, but the farm did really.
I'm sorry, where was this, in New York?
Western New York, yeah.
Western New York, upstate.
Yeah, it's still. It's now the dairy farm's still in the family's hands. My brother and his family have taken over. It's a success, but you're land rich, you're cash poor, basically. But it's not like you're poor. I don't mean to any sympathy that I need, but it's just the point is, I knew that I wasn't going back to the dairy farm. I knew that I was. Going into landscape architecture was a different field. I was probably going to a city. I ended up in New York, one of the most expensive cities in the world. And I guess my 18-year-old self was worried that I'd be making, a lot less money. I heard about friends and other professions that went on. One of my high school classmates is now a senior partner at KPMG, traveling all over the world doing, and I went to a high school of 80 kids, in my graduating class. So, I was really afraid, but you know what? I stuck to my guns. And even when many of my classmates in landscape architecture, the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, some of them, we graduated during a recession. Some of them went into other fields, into sales or marketing or other types of fields. And they left landscape architecture. And I stuck to my roots. I felt like it was in my DNA to be a landscape architect. Growing up on a farm, I really felt a connection to the land. I loved the gardens that my mother and my grandmother and families would cultivate around the houses on the farm. And I just had an affinity for that. And that's kind of why I went into landscape architecture. And I couldn't see dropping that. So I guess I would tell my 18-year-old self, don't worry so much about money, follow your heart. And work hard. You always have to work hard, but don't be afraid. Things will, oftentimes you'll struggle, but things will come out okay. And I feel like I don't want to brag, but I feel like I've done okay. I've been able to live a comfortable life, contribute in a way that I really feel good about, and I'd love to keep contributing. And I think that if you do that, you can't go wrong. You really can't. follow what is really true to you. And you might not even know what that means right now because you don't know what's true. I mean, I remember as an undergrad, I was worried about grading and I was worried about how to lay out a parking lot. And, but now those are just tools. You look at the way grading is more like being a sculptor. As the more mature you get into your profession, you look at a parking lot as being a flat plane in the landscape, and then you play with that flat plane as some other element of the composition. But those are the things that you get out in your graduate studies or in your professional experience, and those things then grow into other understandings and other kind of ways of expressing what's important to you, and that all comes out. You just have to be a little patient. Don't be afraid. Things are going to happen. Things are, and we live in the United States, which we're really fortunate. We really have a good system, and you've also got Penn State behind you. So that's always been a comfort as well. Surely has.
Adrian, you weren't bragging on yourself. You've done more than pretty good. You've done quite well.
Well, thank you very much, Dean.
So would 18-year-old Adrian have listened to that advice?
I think so.
Yeah.
So I was always I listened to people that were older than me. I got a little rebellious toward the end of my college career, I guess. But I appreciated the I might not have right away, but I always appreciated the words that somebody who had more experience than me had to give me. I remember once a landscape architect in New York City who I just knew through professional associations. I didn't belong to ASLA yet. I said, oh, it's too expensive, and all you get is a magazine. It's no good. And what good is it? It's just, they just have a lot of parties. What do you, how does it help you really succeed? And basically he was, I was the wrong person to say that to. He said, Adrian, you don't get anything out of it unless you put something into it. And so you have to put in something to get something out. And so nothing in, nothing out. So I took that as a challenge and I joined ASLA, and I became president eventually. And that's how you get something out. You get in, you have a vision, you have ideas, you want to express them. That was one of the things I did when I was president. We had a design charrette with one of the high schools in New York City, and we designed their roof terrace for them. And we had the kids help us. It was really fun. And Perry Howard from North Carolina came up, and he was the president of ASLA at the time, and he helped us with that design. So, those kinds of things, they're little things, but they all add up. And I think I would have listened. I think I did listen, fortunately. I listened to Dan Jones. He's like another one that had lots of pearls of wisdom there. So, you don't always realize it when you're hearing it the first time, but, you do later on, and you come back to those things and hopefully you act on them.
Absolutely. So, yeah. That's great. This has been fantastic talking to you. I have some closing questions for you.
Oh, boy.
And these are questions. How's that?
Fire away. I'm ready.
I'm going to fire away. These are Penn Stater questions. So
okay.
Here we go. And I'm just going to give you a question. Give me a direct answer back. I'll hit your question. Answer. Ready?
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite Penn State Creamery ice cream?
Oh, mint chocolate chip.
Where did you live?
Oh, and that was bittersweet mint. That's what
it's
called. Yeah.
Mint chocolate chip or bittersweet mint?
I think it's the same thing. It's just, it's called differently. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, well. I goofed up that question. Well.
No, you got it. Hey, Penn State Creamery ice cream, that's always the right answer.
Yeah, that's true. It's great.
Where did you live when you were at Penn State?
I lived in East Halls, and then I lived in Delta Chi fraternity. Yeah.
Okay. Who was one person of influence? You may have already answered this. Who was one person of influence for you during your Penn State experience?
Oh, gosh. I'd have to say Dan Jones.
Dan Jones.
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Can you name a defining moment or experience from your days at Penn State?
I would say we hosted Labash my senior year, and Kellyanne Foster and I co-chaired that event, and we got an Alumni Achievement Award, I think, for that, some kind. And it was a big deal to meet the dean in those days. And here I am, I'm being interviewed by the dean. That's pretty great. I was just a little, podunk from Western New York, and I got to meet the dean at an event and get a little medal. I think I still have the medal somewhere.
Nice.
That was great.
Nice. Last question, and again, you may have already answered this in a previous part of what we were talking about, but perhaps not. What was or what is now your favorite spot on campus?
Oh gosh, that's a really tough one because you've got the mall, which is amazing, but then the Hub Lawn is also beautiful, and I love the space behind the Stoopman family building too. There, the woods and the little gathering under
Hort Woods.
Hort Woods. Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many spaces. Yeah, but I guess the mall really is the one who's just really defines Penn State, I think, and Old Main Lawn. That's really the one. Nice. That's the money shot. That's
the money shot.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Adrian, such a pleasure to meet you today. Such an incredible conversation. We could have gone on and on and on.
Yes,
at least I could have just, I don't know how long you can talk, but I could listen to your examples and your experiences in landscape architecture, working with people, problem solving, inspirational. And I'm just very pleased to have this opportunity to meet you.
Oh, thank you, Dean Carpenter. It's such a pleasure, and I'm just I was so excited to be notified when I was going to be an award recipient, and I just Penn State's deep in my heart. And I'll tell you one final thing. Mm-hmm. My whole family, they're New Yorkers. They all went to Cornell. Every one of them. My grandfather went there. My parents met there. All my aunts and uncles went there. Both of my brothers went there. Their kids both went there. I applied, I got accepted, I interviewed. And then the next day, I think, or maybe the next week, I went to Penn State for an interview and a campus tour, and it was no comparison. I just could never see myself going to Cornell. I was the only one in my family to go to Penn State, and I'm so glad I did, really. So
we're so glad you did too.
Well, thank you
very much. Yeah, thank you, Adrian. I'm thrilled to have met you, and look forward to welcoming you and congratulating you for your award in the fall of 2021.
Thank you so much. I'll look forward to it. Definitely. Take care.
Thanks.